Okay, so this is the video for our 477th attempt to predict the second and third fire signs of 1 Kings 18, which are the two attacks on London and New York, which precipitate World War III. We started predicting these things in 2006. We've been wrong for 16 years. This is our 477th main prediction, but we've had sub-predictions and we've had prediction extensions. In all, we've done over 700 predictions, and we have been iterating closer and closer to a good understanding of how the scriptures depict this. And of course, events have been catching us up. I mean, you could argue we were 16 years ahead of our time in 2006, or ahead of God's time actually. Now the war looks very much like being a metastasis of the Ukraine-Russia conflict, where China and actually the BRICS nations join up with Russia, and NATO is on the other side of it. And indeed that's predicted by Daniel chapter 7. So the predictions normally we do are for the 5th of the month, which is a Zoa Pentecost, and the 21st of the month, which is a 2NC Pentecost. And things are no different this month. We're now predicting Adar 5, actually we go from 4 to 6 to cover the 7th Sabbath of the Zoa Pentecost and the Super Pentecost thereafter. And likewise we go for Adar 20 to 22. And that's March 1 to 4, which is Adar 4 to 6, and March 17 to 20, which is Adar 20 to 22. Now the fascinating thing about Adar 6 is that it's the 6th day of the 6th month of the 6th secular Tishri 1 year of demon possession, which started in 2017 Shabbat 20, when the demons were thrown out of heaven on Tebeth 20, having lost the war, the 8-day war of Revelation 12, which war ran from the end of their 2000-day payback period, 2060-day payback period from 2012 Nisan 16 to 2017 Tebeth 6. Then there was the 8-day war of Revelation 12 from the sentence count of Michael and his angels battling with the demon, with Satan and his angels. And that takes you to the Passover on 2017 Tebeth 14. Then there's 6 days of chucking him. There was no place found for him in heaven, and down he was thrown. That counts as 6. That takes you to Tebeth 20. Then it's 30 days down Jacob's ladder, which is the 30 cubit height of the Ark of Noah. And that takes you to Shabbat 20. And then he's down here for 2,000 days, taking you to 2023 Elul 10, when all the demons are expelled. So we're at the end of the period of demonic possession, and you can tell that by the incredible immorality and the sexual mutilation of minors and the sexualization of kids before they are old enough to have their own view of the situation. And you can tell it from, well, there are many ways to tell it, but the real way to tell it is from the scriptures. And it's taken us this long to get into a position where we have a reasonably decent understanding of them. And that's the wonderful thing about Adar 6, 666, the 6th day of the 6th month of the 6th year of demon possession. And on that day, what happens is that the 10 diadems, the 10 kings of Revelation 17, who get the diadems of Revelation 13. This is basically globalists leveraging the second fire sign for their political and regnal benefit. They become of one thought. Just like after 9/11, the American intelligence services and worldwide intelligence services and politicians, they all, you know what politicians do, they don't solve problems. They use problems to get themselves more power. I mean, that's what their job is, to stay in and get more and more power. And 9/11 was used to enact the Patriot Act, which gave huge powers to the intelligence services, who then spied on absolutely everybody whilst falsely representing that they weren't spying on everybody, but were exposed by Snowden and I guess Assange. So that trick is going to be pulled again. There are two fire signs, one east of London, we think at Dartford, producing a cloud, a mushroom cloud above the Thames, and the other one in Manhattan producing a mushroom cloud above the Hudson. And these will mislead governments and mankind into World War III, which is a total disaster, like every war. But our offensive capability is far too great to make a war a viable proposition. We've long passed the point where wars can be win-lose. Wars now can only be lose-lose if they deploy our latest weapon of mass destruction technology. And this is a lesson we will learn because Isaiah says it. The good thing about World War III, and there isn't hardly anything that's good about it, is that it will be the last war we fight, because it will be made abundantly plain to people who cannot see things with their minds. They cannot see things by deducing things in their own heads. They have to see things by having them their noses rubbed in it. They will see so much death and carnage and destruction and pain and suffering that they will, even dumb and blind as they are, and dulled in their spirits and in their hearts, hardened, they will be forced to the conclusion that everything must be done to avoid war. And then the words of Isaiah and actually the words of John Lennon will be fulfilled, and war will be no more, and they will learn war no more, and they'll beat their swords into ploughshares because of any blooming food. So, which is another feature of war. It's not good for the diet, not good for your health. All these governments who make you wear a mask for your health, then they put you into World War III. Yeah. So the reason we go for the Zoa Pentecost and the 2NC Pentecost is that the fundamental chronological component of 1 Kings 18 is what we call the Laws of Witness Sailing Nation Times, which is a malediction of 7 years after we become Isaac, non-Adamic Isaac. We are alienated from God, which means he cannot seal us, he cannot finish our angelic baptism, and he cannot give us the gifts of the Spirit, and we can't be resurrected from the dead or resurrect anybody else from the dead or speak in tongues or anything like that. Actually, that's not quite true. We do speak in the tongue of the Bible, but we can't speak in the tongues of the nations. And that 7-year malediction runs from our installation over the 2 NCs, which is the covenant of this church. You've all heard of the first new covenant. Well, there's a second new covenant because it wasn't called the new covenant. Jesus said, I make a new covenant with you, which indefinite article leads one to believe that there might be a further covenant. And in fact, there are 24 salvation covenants because he said, I am the Alpha and the Omega, and there are 24 letters in the Greek alphabet. And the last covenant he made was actually the Omega covenant, which is the brotherly love covenant, which is the covenant for salvation by love rather than faith, the covenant of the sheep and the goats of Matthew 25, and the Good Samaritan. And the first covenant he made was to ransom Adam, the angelic ransom covenant, which he made on the date Adam sinned, which was 3993 Nisan 14 BC, 6,014 years and 10 months. So we got it installed on Shabbat 21 because our first installation was over when we were Adamic in this church was 1999 Tishri 2, and it would have been Heshvan 21, but Heshvan was a monthly Sabbath, so it was Chislev 21. The second installation was when we became Abrahamic non-Adamic in Zoa, and that was 2012 Heshvan 2 appointment and Tebeth 21 installation. And the third is when we became Isaac in Zoa, and that was 2015 Chislev 2 appointment, Shabbat 21 installation. Because you have to be appointed at 2NC First Fruits, which is the second of the month, and you have to be installed at the Pentecost 49 days after, exclusively 50 days after, inclusively, which is the 21st of the month, and when it's the third installation it happens at the third of them. The first one is Tishri 2, Heshvan 21. But that one was delayed to the late version by the Sabbath month. You can't be installed in a Sabbath month over anything to do with God. Everything gets delayed a month. So that's why we were wrong actually with the reason we went initially for Tebeth 21 as our installation date is we thought incorrectly from a misinterpretation of 1 Kings Genesis 22, that we weren't appointed Abrahamically over the 2 NCs, but we were. I think that's understanding 3, I don't know which one it is, but anyway, it's the story of Isaac being sacrificed or not sacrificed by Abraham. And the 2 men left behind, we thought they were 1 end season, 2 end season. They aren't. They're the 1 end season, 8 shot season. So we were appointed over the 2 end seas. So our third appointment was Chislev 2 and installation Shabbat 21. And we're then maledicted the minute we are installed, because the purpose of malediction is to deprive you of the blessing. So that ran from 2015 Shabbat 21 to 2022 Shabbat 21. And then you have the sentence count of 1 Kings 18, 42 to 44, which is a 31 times sentence count. And the number of days in August, which was the dream that Mike had to do with the fire signs. And then that takes you to Adar 22, which is the Super Pentecost for Adar 21. So we've gone for Adar 20, 21 and 22 for the third fire sign. And then for the second fire sign, it's a little bit more complicated. We were installed over Isaac's rule over Isaac in 2015, Tebeth 5, that was our Isaiah installation to rule over Isaac. We became Isaac ourselves, and we were appointed to rule over ourselves and any other Isaacs. By Isaac I mean non-Adamic Isaac, which means the son of the ICC with the blessing of having their genes zapped to become non-Adamic Isaac, which means an Edenic restoration, which means you're no longer Adamic, or Canaanian actually, depending on which you were. Everybody is Adamic or Canaanian until they're zapped to be non-Adamic. Although Canaan himself is actually non-Adamic, of course, being Cain, not Adam. And normally you'd expect to run a 7 times malediction to 2022 Tebeth 5, but in 1 Kings 18, Elijah asked the attendant, which is the administration of his church, to come up to, he's at the top of the mountain, which means he's been installed, and the mountain is his administration. He says, go up, look in the direction of the seas. On 2015 Tebeth 5, we had no prediction, so I wasn't asking anybody to look for anything. But at the late version of that festival, on Shabbat 5, there was a prediction. So that's when you have to count it from. So you count it from Shabbat 5, 2015, you go 7 years. He then said to the attendant, go back 7 times. That's the 7 times malediction. That takes you to 2022 Shabbat 5. Then you add the 31 times sentence count, or 30, depending on how you count it, but I think it's 31. Mike's dream would confirm that. And then that takes you to Adar 6, which is 666 day. So basically, we get appointed Isaacally. I mean, this church, if you would believe it, started Adamically, but because of the times in which we live. Satan's lease expired in 2012, a 6,000-year lease, which was a sublease of Jesus' head lease, which was also 6,000 years, but was 4 years in advance of the sublease. And then when it expired, we became Abrahamic, because you can be when Satan isn't the boss anymore. And then, since we're not just baptized into Abraham, but there were 3 patriarchs to Israel, Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. The saints are Jacobean, the priests are Isaac, the citizens are Abrahamic. And so we had to become Isaac. That's one of the blessings, one of the covenants we're in, the blessing of which is to become Isaac. So that happened 3 years later, 3 years and 3 months later. That was our third incarnation. And we had to be appointed all over again. And installed. And those 2 installations over Isaac and over Jacob, the 2 NCs, spirit baptism is Jacob. So those 2 installations were maledicted for 7 times. That takes you to Shabbat 5 and to Shabbat 21. Then you add the 31 sentence count, 31 times 31 day sentence count of 1 Kings 18, 42 to 44, of Elijah putting his head between his knees, going up the mountain, saying to his attendant, go up, look in the direction of the sea. The attendant says there's nothing at all. He says go back 7 times. Attendant says there's a small cloud like a man's palm rising from the sea. All of that counts as 31 times. So you add that to the end of the malediction and you get to Adar 6 or Adar 21, and then we go 1 day either side to cater for the Super Pentecost and the 7th Sabbath, because it came about in the 7th that he saw this cloud rising from the sea, which could be the 7th Sabbath, or it could be the end of the 7 times, or it could be any old 7th, because it's not a noun. So that's why they're all happening in Adar. And that's actually a fulfillment of 1 Kings 19, because Elisha was ploughing with 12 yokes of cattle, 24 years. And as I said, we were installed 1999, so 24 years takes you to 2023. And Elijah found him when Elisha was in the 12th pair, which is 2022 to 2024, basically, the end of 2023. But then it says he was in the 12th, and that's one of these wonderful elements of the Bible code, a nounless number. And it's used when he's in the 12th in two different ways. If he was just in the 12th day or something, it would say the 12th day or the 12th year or the 12th cow, and you would interpret that noun to mean day or year or whatever it was. But when there's no noun, it's because God wants to say two things. All of the ambiguity is precise. It's because he wants to say precisely two things. And it's because it's the 12th of the 12th, actually. So it's Adar 12 when Elijah becomes in. Well, Elijah was in the 12th. So Elisha and Elijah become in each other on the 12th. And the way that works is I baptise Caleb, who is actually Elijah, until we swap coats. I'm Elisha and he's Elijah. Then we swap coats and it's the other way around. And I baptise him on Adar 5. And then he, 7 days later, baptises the two Laodicean half apostles on Adar 12. And at that point, the new Elijah, who was Elisha, is now in Laodicea, which is the church of Elijah, who's now Elisha. And that's the way this book is written. It's a mind twister. So it's fun once you understand the games that are being played. You can have a good old laugh with God, because that's what Isaac means, laughter. Because Sarah laughed when she was told she was going to conceive at her ripe old age. But the prophetic meaning of that is the fulfillment of Voltaire's majestic words when he said that God is a comedian playing to an audience too afraid to laugh. Well, I invite you to join an audience which is not too afraid to laugh, which audience is called the Lord's Witnesses. And we have a good old laugh with all of the double entendres of God, who is a master comedian. The church of the anti-Pharisees is what we try to be. And may God bless us to succeed in that endeavour. So here's the exciting stuff. 666s have appeared everywhere. So there are 666 days that the beast, the globalist beast, has of power after he's let off the 1,000-day chain of Revelation 20, taking a day for a year. And you know he's let off the chain when Putin invaded Ukraine, because that's not something you can do when you're on a chain of God, which was Adar 14. February, whatever it was, 20-something, what was it? I can't remember when it was, Gregorian, when he invaded. But it was Adar 14 BLC, when he annexed the Donbass, and therefore the bear had 3 ribs in his mouth. So the lease of the 1,000-day chain ended actually on Shabbat 30. You count 666 days after that, the number of the beast. You get Tebeth 6, 2023, that's the end of the authority of the beast. You count 10 months back for the 10 diadems from that, and you get to Adar 6, second fire sign. That is what the 10 kings who run the beast use to be of one thought and to say, oh, the only way to stop this terrible attack by terrorists on Western values is to make a globalist one world government. We have to do that now. This is our one thought. That's where this all starts. And so on the day of 666, this beast that has power for 666 days starts its last 10 months of power and authority. And the kingdom of God is appointed on Elul 16, the day I was born, the day this church began, and the day that I baptized Elijah of Laodicea, or his precursor, to steal my baptism, although I didn't know they were going to do that. I only found out in 2008. I baptized in 2002, Elul 16. So those are all the 666s. Incidentally, Revelation 13 can be 616 in the Ephraimi scriptures and in the Onyxi, whatever it's called, fragment. That's the oldest copy of it, but it also 666 in lots of other codexes. And we have found in the Bible that when there is ambiguity, both meanings are true. So the secular meaning of 666 of Revelation 13 is 666. That's the number of the secular beast, but there's a sacred beast, the corruption of a true church, and its solution and all sorts of other stuff. 616 is Elul 16, the 16th day of the 6th month. So we are the Church of 616, and we're fighting the beast of 666 actually. So God is aware of both possible numbers, and they both have a validity, a valency. And the one is sacred, 616, and the other is secular, 666. So I suppose I should say prepare for 666 day, which is March the 3rd, 4th. On that day there will be, or there will have recently been, a fire sign, and the globalists 10 kings will say, now we need to form the Tony Blair, William Hague globalist coalition, because you know what politicians do. They don't solve any problems, they use problems to give themselves more power. And the race is on to be the mayor of the world. We are one village, a global village. And the most dangerous thing we can possibly do as a race is have one government. It's okay to have one judge for international law, not for intra-national law, but for inter-national law, and that distinction must be made. If it's a judge for intra-national law, it's a worldwide government. The worst thing you can possibly have is a worldwide government. The whole reason that God confused our languages at Babel was to prevent it. It was a monopoly prevention tactic. It prevented people who spoke Russian trying to tell people who spoke German how they should live their lives. Now, regrettably, because of Google Translate and because of the technology we have, nearly everybody speaks English, and even if they don't, the technology enables us one group to rule the whole world, and that will be a catastrophe, but it's predicted to occur. And then when we do become slaves to this one world government, that is when Moses appears. But he didn't appear to the Jews until they were slaves. So we must be enslaved, and then Jesus will turn up, or send his representative, who will liberate us from these slaves in an exodus into an ark. And that's what we look forward to. Incidentally, we think there are already people in the ark. The first group of saints went up on Shabbat 17 to 22, and the next group goes up Adar 17 to 22. We actually go up between the two fire signs. But that doesn't mean we disappear, because the ark is in a different space-time. It doesn't actually affect what you're doing down here at all. Because if it did, it would be a kingdom manifestation which would short-circuit the testing of everybody. Alright, that's enough for today. Thanks for listening, and may God bless you and save you into the ark.